you want to know whether or not A Quiet Place Day 1 is worth watching, the answer is yes. If you like the Quiet Place series, and if you like alien or monster thriller movies, then you'll enjoy this. I want to show some video game footage in the background just so you guys have something to look at. But anyway, let's talk about A Quiet Place Day 1. I've made series of videos for A Quiet Place because it's one of my favorite franchises, and I saw A Quiet Place Day 1 on opening day, and I really liked it, at least the majority of it. They did some very interesting elements here, but the question that I know some people have is it better than the first movie? Definitely not. It feels more like a solid spin-off, which is likely what future Quiet Place movies will be. It retains the horror and survival elements and monsters getting people. And for anyone who wants to know what happens to the cat, big spoiler, the cat's okay. Never gets hurt, wears a crap ton of armor, and I'm 100% okay with that. I would have become completely undone in the theater had they killed the cat. I was like looking away at parts. And there's also some stuff that they show in the theater that they completely changed in the movie, I guess, to subvert expectations, which I'm happy for. There was a section in there that just wasn't in there, and it was a completely different person in the scene. Anyway, I'm gonna go into things that people mostly care about. So the story, the action, acting, scare factor, monsters, character building, and world building. Let's start with the story. Monsters touch down on Earth, people must survive by not making noise. There's still that. It's still very much a theme. But this time, the setting is in the city, which I liked, and the overall story is good. However, it does feel like this movie is split into two parts, and the first part focuses on surviving in the city, but near the second and last acts of the movie, it kind of shifts into this feel-good narrative with humans being cute with each other and momentarily ignoring the surrounding dangers. It's not that they're ignoring it, but you just kind of forget about it for a while. Like, the audience is still aware of it, but the characters kind of pretend sort of like they're not. I mean, they still are quiet. It just has a completely different feel. The focus near the end might annoy people who are specifically there for a monster survival movie. The intensity doesn't really pick up again until the very conclusion, and by then you already know what's gonna happen, and because the cat's involved, everyone that holds it has plot armor, and also because the stupid marketing people in one of the trailers, like one of the recent trailers, they just give away a gigantic spoiler for the ending. So do not watch the trailers, or don't watch any clips if you still have managed to not watch this movie. However, the plot armor of the cat, I think that they did that very well. The story could have easily used the monsters as a backdrop, and for much of the second half of the movie, it almost feels like they are. But I've seen other movies do the backdrop method where it's, hey, these people are surviving, and the monsters just so happen to be an obstacle that they have to overcome, rather than here's this obstacle and the people are a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, the more focus is on the surviving and the thrill and what's actually attacking those people rather than just the people. That said, for a Quiet Place movie set in the city, I expected more survival and horror elements. While the element of fear is present, it doesn't necessarily permeate 100% of the movie. I understand the need for the downtime, the rest that the characters would have, but if you're expecting non-stop tension, this isn't the movie for you. And shameless plug here, if you want an idea of something with horror elements throughout, then I did a story from the perspective of some people that was a continuation of the Shin Godzilla movie. I have a playlist, and it's called Shin Godzilla Creepypasta Alternate Ending POV. That's how I imagine the situation would play out. And don't worry, if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla, you don't need to watch it or to have watched it to enjoy the story. Just know that, spoiler alert for the ending of Shin Godzilla, it involves a constantly evolving kaiju creature, very large creature, and right before the military freezes it, the next stage of its evolution features these humanoid creatures emerging from its tail, which would have been a blight to humankind. I think it would have caused the mass extinction, and that's basically it. Anyway, the conclusion of A Quiet Place Day 1 is sweet, and being a prequel, it features an appearance from one of the characters in the second movie. No, the deaf kid and her family are not in it. I actually found it more enjoyable from the perspective of characters who can hear. It's more terrifying when you hear the creatures clicking, but you can't see them due to low visibility. And also, there's no way for them to kind of communicate because they don't know sign language. The story was sweet, but you're gonna walk away feeling as though it was much more about the main character and less about the main character surviving, if that makes sense. As for the action, the movie did have a lot of it. I think it delivered on being a Quiet Place movie with the kind of action that we got. If you want to see the monster going around and killing people, you get a good amount of that early on, but the rest of the time it's just suspense and what if scenarios and chasing and hiding. The acting was superb, and Lupita is amazing. I love her as an actress, and she's very cute, but also extremely talented. She did a great job with Fear, and so did Eddie. And I know his name isn't Eddie, but that's how I know him from Stranger Things. When both the main characters were afraid, I actually believed that they were afraid, and the cat did an amazing job too. He was trained so well, you can tell it was an adventure for him. I feel like in this universe, the cat probably thought this entire thing was an adventure. Like, look how cute he is. So there's Eddie. The scare factor. Let's talk about the scare factor in A Quiet Place. It was pretty good. The film had plenty of suspenseful elements, and the added details about the monster made them more fascinating to me. Then again, I'm a sucker for monsters, you know how I am. But they managed to keep the Quiet Place monsters, or the Death Angels as they're called, as terrifying as they were in the first movie by showing them through a fresh perspective, fresh pair of eyes. Similar to how the Alien franchise handles the xenomorphs, the creatures never actually stopped being scary. Like in the second movie, they kind of stopped being scary a little bit, and there was a bit of plot armor going on with the humans. And you know, that's what made it very ironic, because the second movie made them look whatever, okay, we know how to kill them. So I think A Quiet Place Day 1 outdid the second movie in terms of the scare factor, of course, because it's also a prequel showing when things just happen. Also, the way the scenes were shot when things were happening around some of the characters was done very well. I immersed myself in it completely, and when the movie is this good, when it does a good job at kind of doing that for you or laying out the groundwork for you, you don't have to do the work to convince yourself that what's happening is happening. The sound design was also good, which helped. The movie isn't as quiet as the first one, but it makes sense because people are in the city. It's so interesting that even in a situation like that, people revert to their primal nature to want to be quiet, but only through trial and error after the initial screaming and seeing people get mowed down by the aliens. I started feeling increasingly anxious though when there was too much noise, or someone accidentally kicks something or something falls, and you're like, why would you do that? What are you doing? You actually feel for the people, you get mad at them, and then you end up flinching and closing your own eyes as well when you're holding your breath and watching the movie because you don't want anything to happen. You actually feel like you're there. There's a specific scene where there's a lot of people and my anxiety just began to climb through the roof, because as quiet as you can be, when you're within a mob of people, thousands of people all walking silently down a street in the city with concrete buildings on either side that cause a bunch of noise pollution and reverberation to happen, yeah, it's not so silent anymore. And about the monsters were amazing. And we still see the same character design, obviously. I love these monsters because I haven't seen anything so innovative in a long time. Also, another shameless plug, if you want a cheesy story based on A Quiet Place, I made one from the perspective of the Quiet Place monsters. It's not official lore, but it's a theory of why I think that the Death Angels were built the way they are, why they evolved the way they are, how they got to Earth, and why they attacked. You can check out the link because it's unlisted right now, like a lot of the POVs are, because it was just gonna mess with my channel's algorithm and stuff because these are stories, but you can get it through the link only. So there it is, and I'll also put one for the playlist itself if you want to check out the other POVs if you're interested in that kind of thing. I might re-upload these to my other channel, but I don't know. I also did countless videos on A Quiet Place theories, such as the recent How to Survive a Quiet Place in the City, and other theories like what if War of the Worlds happened during A Quiet Place. And there's just a whole playlist with almost 30 videos in it, so have fun with that if you're into the franchise. Some are very cheesy, I know, but I was just having fun because those are questions that revolve in my head all the time. And that's how you know that your franchise is interesting, when people walk away having a lot of questions, but not the questions that are like, ugh, you didn't write this very well. There's one element of A Quiet Place that they didn't write well, and it's obviously humans would have figured out the sound thing. But the rest of it, the monsters themselves, very interested in the monsters. Anyway, back to the movie review. The monsters are still done very well in this. when they're not operating as a backdrop. As for character building, all right, so we're following Lupita's character here. I actually don't know her name. Wait, hold on. I think it's Sammy or something. Yeah, I think it's Sammy, but they don't say it a whole lot, so that's why I almost forgot, but I believe it's Sammy. And I found myself liking her character really easily. Maybe it's because I love Lupita, but regardless, I genuinely cared about what happened to her, and the other main character, I was genuinely concerned for them, which wasn't necessarily the case with some of the main characters in the second movie. The world building. One of the things I love most about A Quiet Place Day 1 was the world building, because they've added elements and perspectives. They did that with the second movie too, which I appreciated. And there's an element that they added of the monsters that I've not seen in the other movies. We know early on that they can't swim, which is how the people were able to evacuate on the boats, even though I know, again, it's silly because the government would have figured out that sound was an issue and used sound as a weapon against them, especially when you consider in the first movie, they even had time to publish that it was sound that was an issue. Also, the helicopters that were flying overhead and talking on the loudspeaker so people could hear them down below for instructions in the city must have recognized that the horde of monsters were following them everywhere they went. Humans are not that stupid and would have deduced that these things are attracted to noise. Someone would have noticed that they don't have eyes. And even if you consider that most of the human population might be stupid and not be able to observe with their freaking eyes, there are experts among them who study animals and would likely recognize that this was an issue or a feature that these monsters had or lacked. Not only do these creatures lack eyes, but they also are emitting these clicking noises akin to dolphins, suggesting adaptations for seeing in darkness. But let's just go with it. These were mild spoilers, so let's get into heavier ones. So we piece together that our protagonist reluctantly boards a bus marked hospice, hinting at her terminal condition, on top of her making the joke about being dead in the morning in the beginning of the movie. She likely has cancer or another terminal illness with her medication. I think she mentioned that in the poem in the beginning of the movie that she was reading to people. And she has this patch worn on her side aimed at keeping her comfortable. So she and her cat Frodo are preparing to return to the hospice on the bus, and all she wanted before her demise was a slice of freaking pizza from the city, from the shop where her father used to take her. She and her male nurse are very close, you can see that, and it seems as though he loves her. She's not hard to love, and throughout the whole movie, you have to constantly be aware that this woman is going to die, which, as you get to know her and spend more time with her throughout her journey and through other characters, you find yourself just wanting to protect her and wanting her to live regardless of the fact she's going to die anyway. You feel for her so much that you just want her to get that last piece of pizza, even when everyone is evacuating, because she knows she's going to die anyway, regardless, you know? She's heading in the opposite direction because she just wants that slice of pizza to feel close to her father again before she goes. That's the only item on her bucket list, and it's so simple. She's not asking to bungee jump out of a plane. She's not asking to meet a famous celebrity. She just wants a slice of the pizza from the shop that her father used to take her to when she was little, which is so wholesome, and you just want that for her. And then when Eddie is introduced, it's a heartwarming moment. He kind of provides a bit of comic relief, and it's not because he's funny. It's because his endearing nature and innocence and his tendency to follow her just because he's curious or out of fear or whatever it is. It's just really cute. I don't know, it just makes you kind of laugh. And while she shares his fear, her perspective is kind of colored by her having accepted her imminent death. And I like how realistic it is, because as these monsters are coming down and wreaking havoc on everyone, the main character's instincts still kick in to run and hide, because your body's still telling you that you don't want to get ripped apart by a predator. Nobody wants to die in agony and fear. It doesn't matter how much pain you're in or what you're dying of. Like, nobody wants to go like that. Now, I'm not really sure what's going on with Eric, but obviously he has his own issues, whether it be PTSD or panic attacks. He's possibly on the spectrum, but there are times when he almost loses it and she calms him down. It's a good thing the main character does too, because we see right after, in the times where she chose to help him and not just think about herself, there's a situation later where she wouldn't have been able to help herself, like when they're under the water. And it's funny, that's how you know that you've made your characters likable, because Eddie is starting to make noise because he's starting to panic. And I thought that, oh, can he not swim or something? But I think he's just having a panic attack of being locked in that little area. So he starts making all that noise, and I'm like, shut up. But unlike the beginning, or there was a section at the start where everyone was hiding and there was a man making noise and I felt bad for him because he was afraid, my first thing was, oh my God, throw him off the building, because he's gonna get that little kid and all these people killed. Just throw him off the building. And he dies because the guy hit his head on the brick thing and he dies anyway. And I do feel bad about that, but I'm more forgiving and I'm like, oh, that was necessary. It was unfortunate. It's sad. It was necessary. But when it's happening to Eddie, the first thing I'm thinking is, oh my God, please don't leave him. I'll understand if she does, but please, Eddie, shut up because I don't want you to die. Like, it's night and day difference with him and the guy in the beginning. I also like how the protagonist manages to be portrayed as a very strong character while being extremely physically weak. She shows fear and she gets hurt. And the same thing with Eddie. He's physically strong, but he has an issue that he has to overcome too. And he does that when he has to look after someone outside of himself, including Frodo the cat, which is the same thing with the main character looking after someone outside of herself too. Except one person's gonna live and the one person's gonna die. It's really interesting. I love the poetry of their pairing. As soon as I saw Frodo looking at Eddie after Eddie almost drowned, I immediately said to myself, yep, this is going to be his cat now. I just knew it. The scene with the people shuffling through the street that I mentioned early on gave me so much anxiety because just more people and more people started coming out after they heard the military flying overhead, instructing them to make their way to the evacuation venue, which was by the docks where they had the boats waiting. The people are so stupid though. I can't even totally blame them. Here's a scene from the trailer. Look how many people look at this. This is crazy. And they're not running or screaming. They're just being quiet. And because the military had flown overhead, the monsters are following them. They're like, oh, no monsters? Let's just go. Let's just be quiet as possible. These people have no understanding of what these creatures are. And not everyone grasps that any noise at all can attract them. You see people in wheelchairs dragging their luggage and the camera focuses on all these small details that create noise. And of course, the monsters come and cut down all those people. And I feel bad for them. I really do. I wish there were more close-up shots depicting these moments and the brutality of the attacks. But the film avoids showing explicit gore or brutality as it's happening. And to be fair, the first two movies also kind of refrained from explicit violence, possibly to align with John Krasinski's approach, like what he did. They do show the aftermath of things, like blood smeared on the walls, and some of those look like straight up props that people did just to make it look like that. You could tell it was handmade because what? Okay, a human was thrown and its head splattered and then there's no splatter around. There's just, or where look at it. It looks like someone just threw a bucket of paint and smeared it or something like splat, smear, but there's no other red splatter anywhere else, which does not make any sense. And you know that that's what it was because look, it looks like a splatter. This was not someone's hand going here. It was a splatter. And then someone just went splatter and then woo. It's so obviously done. So I think they could have done a little bit better job with this. But anyway, it's fine. That, like I said, the movie was so decent that I can overlook these little things. Like when I write my horror stories, I'm a lot more visceral and descriptive though, as you'll hear in the Godzilla one. Oh, trigger warning for that, by the way. If you don't like extremely graphic details of viscera and gore, then that story is definitely not for you. And no cats or dogs die in either of the stories that I linked you guys. A little more off topic, there needs to be a website for creepypasta stories for dogs dying in them. As horrible as it sounds, I'm not against hearing a story about a dog dying. If it's extremely descriptive and the author is describing the dog crying out in pain in the story, then yeah, that will fuck me up because I can see the imagery the more descriptive it is. And I've written stories where animals have died too. One of them particularly I stopped writing many years ago and have not finished it because I had to describe a story, and to make me like put myself in the character's shoes, I decided to use my dog as a stand-in. And there's a scene I wrote where she's getting hurt and it made me freaking depressed. Like I was crying while I was writing it and my fingers were shaking and everything. Like it was terrible. I left the story unfinished because I wrote that part, and it's been a few years now since my baby's passed away, well after that time. But every time I attempt to finish that story, like because I have to read it over before continuing, I have to stop. I don't even know if I'll ever be able to finish that book. But anyway, good thing they didn't kill the cat in the movie. I recognize that the cat had a ton of plot armor. The cat was underwater for quite a while, and I'm like, oh no. I was worried about Lupita's character, Sammy, and I was worried about the cat. And I know cats can hold their breath like humans, but the cat looked so unbothered and unafraid the entire movie. When he came out of the water, he was barely wet. There was not a scratch on him the entire movie, and I recognize that was stupid, but I was so okay with that. 1000% okay with that. The whole time I was more stressed out because I was worrying what was gonna happen to the cat. There were times I was like, just let the cat run. You're gonna get yourself killed and the cat killed if you hold on to the cat. But then the cat was the main character's baby, so I couldn't even see her leaving him to fend on his own, so I understood why she kept him around. I had no problem, as stupid as it was, with the cat being in the movie and having over 9,000 plot armor. I know that would probably take some people off and ruin the immersion for them, but for me personally, it made me very happy. They keep doing close-ups of how cute he is, and like, he is a main character. Like, the cat's not just some thing that they just happen to be holding. He's a main character. So I thought they were gonna give him the, you know, the I Am Legend treatment, if you know what I mean. I also don't think our main character would have been able to survive the emotional heartbreak of that, since he was literally all she had left. I love the ending though. And when it shows the Quiet Place monsters closing in on Eddie, or Eric as he's called in the movie, I did feel anxious, but I knew nothing was going to happen to him. It would have been so messed up if it did. And I know a lot of people would have respected the movie for doing that, but they did manage to build up suspense, because when it's about to happen, there's a moment when you're hoping for Eric and you're wishing for him, because he did kind of function as an underdog, but he's also holding the freaking cat, and you're like, no! And there's a thing there, because it's like, okay, he is there, it's in the air, the camera cuts from it being in the air. As he's running, it's not in the air anymore, and it just is like, woo, and then happens to kind of, oh, right? Oh my god, that's terrifying. That is terrifying, and he jumps in the water with the cat right in time. The amount of time this cat has been underwater, realistically, the cat would have been like, right! You know, like that sound they make when they're freaking out, and its eyes would have been all wide. Frodo would have been freaking out. He'd been like, okay, enough is enough, bro. First of all, these things are chasing me. Realistically, the cat's body language would have been totally different, but no one wants to see an actual real cat on screen being stressed out, because that means clearly someone is stressing the cat out, like something bad is happening to the cat. If they want to use CGI and AI for that, that's fine, but I'm okay with the cat looking sweet, like nothing is happening, like he's just enjoying himself, he's just a prop in the movie, and the humans are acting scared, and he's just like, this is great. Oh, of course they got an extrovert cat. But anyway, her choosing to die at the hand of the monster seemed wild to me, and I almost expected that Sammy, the main character, was going to play the piano like her father did. My husband even thought that's what was going to happen near the end, but I theorized that because the protagonist saw that place where the piano was as such a sacred venue, because her father played that same piano, she wouldn't want the monsters coming in and ruining it, you know? She wants it to remain untouched. So that's understandable. So she went outside in the street, imagining the city singing and imagining how it used to be, and then in the end, she chose on her own terms, at her time, when to go. As she was listening to her music on the speaker, and she knew her cat was safe, she saw them get to safety, and she's like, okay, I can let go now. And I thought that was very, very sweet. There was nothing to live for anymore, and she knew she wasn't going to be able to get medication or have the strength to go out and search it out. For what purpose? To prolong her being alone and suffering in fear. The one takeaway is that these monsters kill you pretty quickly anyway. Just the sheer brute force of them colliding into you like a freaking linebacker, you'd probably be knocked out before they even started tearing you apart. And the main character is so feeble, I doubt she would survive getting knocked on the ground, or just knocked, period.
I couldn't believe my eyes.
One of the things I love the most about A Quiet Place Day 1 is that the ending did not show the humans defeating the monsters. They escaped them. I really hated how the second Quiet Place movie ended, especially with the kids. It was kind of cheesy, especially when the deaf girl used a pole to somehow impale the death angel by just hitting it with what would not be enough force to do any damage. What was its head made of? Lychee? Like, what? It's not even an axe. That whole scene would have made sense had she thrown an axe in its freaking head. But no, she slams down a pole with barely any force, and it somehow embeds itself like she impaled it. That kind of injury, look at how she pulls it out. It looks as though she had stabbed it in the head, which she did not. See, she swings it in like an axe. How? You could see it more clearly there. How? It was so soft. Not even if you had an open wound on a human or a human brain exposed would it have been that easy to just squish and become embedded like that. That makes no sense. She didn't even swing hard enough for it to be believable that it did that kind of damage to the monster. And it ended exactly the same one, or the first one did. They disable them with sound and kill them. And then after that, it's no longer scary because now you know how to defeat the monsters. So why do we need another movie with them being defeated exactly the same way that they were defeated in the first one or the second one? So now more people know. Now everyone's aware that it's sound. I still enjoyed A Quiet Place Day 1, but I do like the element of the monster still being scary. And now you may be wondering, okay, where else can the franchise go from here? I do think that the franchise can expand, and here's how. Similar to what I said in my story, these Quiet Place monsters come from another planet. That's what we're theorizing, right? That's what we believe anyway, most of us. If we're going with that theory, then they evolved to be that way for a reason. The monsters have teeth, which means they probably eat, which means there are animals out there that would be prey to them. This leaves a possibility open that they might themselves have predators. Maybe the armor that they have isn't just for the hostility of their environment or the pressure of it, but also it acts as some kind of protection against other predators. If these meteors are parts of their planet, as I claimed in my story, then wouldn't it be possible for not just the Quiet Place monsters to be on them? Wouldn't it be possible that other creatures from their ecosystem would be on there as well? Imagine in a movie where people are running from the Quiet Place monsters. Maybe there's a group of these creatures and the humans stop running because there's nowhere for them to go. The monsters are closing in on them, and all of a sudden, the Quiet Place monsters stop and listen. However, the humans notice that it's not because of any sound. The Quiet Place monsters suddenly run for the hills and take off super fast in the opposite direction, scattering and making weird noises that they've never made before. To the humans, they recognize it as fear, something they've never seen on these monsters ever, aside from one sound affecting them or one frequency. I mean, these aliens will follow humans into the water to their own detriment, knowing that they can't swim, based on how aggressive they are. And it's very hard to believe that there's something out there that these creatures are afraid of. So now the humans have to worry about another creature that's even more terrible than the Quiet Place monsters. Imagine now that they don't have to worry about the Quiet Place monsters. Imagine that some humans will see the Death Angels, they then witness the Death Angel monster running away and making a horrible shrieking noise of agony. The humans would hear crunching noises and then a huge scraping noise. Then after they come out of hiding and look in the direction that the Quiet Place monster went, maybe in another street or block, they would see its blood trail going somewhere. And then when they look at the end of the trail, they see pieces of the Quiet Place monster all over the place. The one thing that people would probably be wondering is, what the hell has the power to kill this thing and tear it apart like this? Like, we've unleashed everything on these things and nothing worked. Axe, guns, freaking buckshots, like missiles, nothing worked. Imagine humans seeing a creature, or it's revealed later, something, that's very good at hiding. You can't see it. You don't even know how to hide from this thing because it's camouflage, or it hides from you. It always keeps itself hidden from your view. Or maybe here's another direction. Have the Quiet Place monsters not be able to see you, obviously, as they already are, but then as humans are taking their time and walking quietly and have become very good at killing these creatures, you realize that some of them are not affected by the noise. Then as some humans start walking away, they see that specific Quiet Place monster's head slowly turning to track them. They're like, wait a minute, that one isn't being affected by the frequency. The other ones, they're fine. They're acting the way that they're supposed to act, skitzing out, and there's that one just standing still staring at us, sort of, or in our direction. And to the humans' horror, they would realize, oh shit, that one can see it, because not only is it not affected by the noise, but as we're walking away, its head is turning slightly, like to track us as we're moving. They walk in the other direction and the thing's head turns to them again. It's like, oh my god. Maybe there's a subset of the species that developed eyes that they can detect motion. Maybe they can't see very well, but they can at least detect motion. Infrared, heat, maybe they adapt very quickly. Maybe what we saw in the movie with those egg sac looking things were babies. That was a part I honed in on, and those babies can adapt super quickly to their environment. Like, we see the Quiet Place monster, like, kind of checking out these things. Like, these look, I don't know, they feel like they're eggs. There are 100 different ideas that you can employ to keep the franchise scary and evolving. You must take the weapon that you thought was good and got comfortable with being a way to defeat the monsters and then make it absolutely useless. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue the franchise with day 2, day 12, and upwards from different perspectives, because that would be interesting. I'm okay with watching 100 of these movies from different perspectives if they add to it. I would want them to showcase people defeating all the monsters and trying to get back to civilization, only for them to realize that it isn't over and there's still more meteors with something else on it. I want the humans to be ready with their feedback machines and stuff they're gonna build just to kill these monsters and fall into step with the routine of doing this, regularly, us seeing the main characters like badasses going through the street and taking care of these monsters because now they're not afraid of them anymore. Only for a new threat to be introduced and it be much worse than the first. See that? That is how you evolve the franchise. Keep it scary, keep the stupid comedy and jokes out of it, don't make it into Marvel or Disney, look at what they're doing and just do the complete opposite. And I think A Quiet Place 1 did a good job at that. And that's my honest review. It was a good movie, not the best movie ever, but as a person who's a Quiet Place fan, I absolutely loved it. It was a great, different perspective. Now, the burning question I have is, and I know other people will too, what the hell were they doing with those freaking egg sacs that they were all tearing apart when they called the other Death Angels to come help them? Because it surely didn't look like they were eating it. And even if you want to surmise that's what they were doing, why would it be sniffing it and looking at it as if it's trying to ascertain whether or not what's inside is ready? I like that they just put that there and did not expound on it. I like that the humans don't know what's going on and we as the audience don't know what's going on. Nobody has time to sit down and study that. It's just a little drop, a little bit more of the lore that they put in that we have no idea what the frick is going on. I love it. And what I love even more, which was a very good choice, is you never see what comes out of it. You see them digging through it together and you don't see what comes out or what they're digging. So either the person who directed this movie or wrote this movie already has a second part of this in store and it's gonna be like what I said, it's gonna be something else, because there was one of the Death Angels that looked a lot bigger than the others. We'll get into that later because that was just crazy.